What if I told you that Alexander Graham Bell's first words on the telephone were not, "Mr. Watson, come here"? What if the telephone was actually invented by accident while Bell was trying to help deaf people? And here's the shocking part. Bell almost lost everything because of a dirty trick that happened just hours before his patent was approved. Today, you'll discover the untold secrets behind the invention that changed human communication forever. Stay until the end to learn the dark mystery Bell took to his grave. Welcome to English Through Truth, where you learn real English through fascinating stories that most people don't know. Today's story is about Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone. But this isn't the story you learned in school. We'll explore the hidden truths, the rivalries, the accidents, and the mysteries. And while you're learning these secrets, you're also improving your English naturally. Let's begin with a secret from Bell's childhood that explains everything. Section 1. The Secret Beginning. Alexander Graham Bell was born in Scotland in 1847, but here's what most people don't know. His family was obsessed with speech and sound, but for a heartbreaking reason. Bell's mother was almost completely deaf. Can you imagine? His father taught deaf people how to speak, and young Alexander watched his mother struggle to communicate every single day. But here's the fascinating part. Bell learned to speak very clearly and slowly directly into her mother's forehead. Yes, her forehead. She could feel the vibrations of his voice through her skull bones. This strange technique planted a seed in Bell's mind. Sound is actually vibration, and vibration can travel in unexpected ways. When Bell was just 12 years old, he made his first invention. He created a simple machine that could clean wheat. Not impressive, right? Wrong. This shows us that Bell wasn't just a dreamer, he was a doer. He took ideas and made them real. The tragedy continued. Both of Bell's brothers died from tuberculosis. His family was destroyed by grief. In 1870, they moved to Canada, hoping for a fresh start. Bell was 23 years old, alone with his parents, carrying the weight of lost brothers and a deaf mother. This pain would drive everything he did next. Section 2. The Accidental Path. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Bell never planned to invent the telephone. Never. He moved to Boston and became a teacher of deaf children. He was passionate about helping them communicate. He even taught a method called visible speech that his father had invented, using symbols to show how to position the mouth and tongue. One of his students was a young girl named Mabel Hubbard. She had become deaf after getting scarlet fever as a child. Bell fell deeply in love with her, but there was a problem. Her father, Gardner Hubbard, was a wealthy lawyer who didn't think a poor teacher was good enough for his daughter. So Bell made a deal with Mabel's father and another businessman named Thomas Sanders. Give me money to do research, and I'll create something valuable. But what was he researching? Not the telephone. He was trying to invent a harmonic telegraph that could send multiple telegraph messages on one wire at the same time. This would save telegraph companies millions of dollars. Night after night, Bell worked in his laboratory, experimenting with electricity, wires, and vibrating metal strips called reeds. He hired an assistant named Thomas Watson, a young mechanic who understood electrical equipment. And then, on June 2, 1875, something unexpected happened. Watson was working in one room, and Bell was in another room, connected by wire. Watson accidentally plucked one of the metal reeds too hard. In the other room, Bell heard something impossible, a sound coming through the wire. Not a telegraph click, an actual sound. Bell's heart raced. He realized immediately, if vibrations could travel through wire, then voices could travel through wire. The telephone was born in that accidental moment. Section 3. The Stolen Victory. Now here comes the controversial part. Bell rushed to perfect his invention. On February 14, 1876, Valentine's Day, Bell's lawyer filed a patent application for the telephone at the U.S. Patent Office. But here's the shocking secret. Just a few hours later that same day, another inventor named Elisha Gray filed a similar patent for a telephone device. Who would get the patent? The person who filed first, and that was Bell, by mere hours. But the story gets darker. Some historians believe that someone at the patent office showed Bell's designs to Gray's team, or showed Gray's designs to Bell's team. Nobody knows for sure. This controversy haunted Bell for the rest of his life. On March 10, 1876, Bell finally made the telephone work perfectly. He spilled battery acid on his clothes and called out to Watson in the other room, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." Watson heard these words through the telephone wire and came running. History was made. But most people don't know what Bell said next, just minutes later during that same successful test. He said, "Mr. Watson, please come here, I want to." Then he said other sentences, testing the device. The famous quote is real, but it wasn't planned or dramatic. It was almost an accident, just like the invention itself. Within months, Bell demonstrated his telephone at the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia. The Emperor of Brazil, Dom Pedro, tested the device. When he heard Bell's voice coming through the wire from across the room, he dropped the telephone and shouted, "My God, it talks!" The telephone became an instant sensation. Bell was suddenly famous worldwide. He married Mabel Hubbard in 1877. Her father, who once rejected him, became one of his biggest supporters. Section 4. The Dark Secrets. Success brought problems. Elisha Gray and many other inventors sued Bell, claiming they had invented the telephone first. Bell fought over 600 legal battles over the telephone patent. 600! Can you imagine the stress? Some people called him a fraud. Some said he stole the idea. The newspapers published cruel cartoons. Bell became depressed and anxious. He won every single legal case, but the accusations hurt him deeply. Here's another secret. Bell became very wealthy from the telephone, but he was uncomfortable with the fame. He felt like he had abandoned his true mission, helping deaf people. The telephone, a device for hearing people, had made him famous, but his deaf students were forgotten. There's an even darker secret. Bell had some controversial ideas that many people today find disturbing. He believed in something called eugenics, the idea that society should prevent certain people from having children. He worried that deaf people marrying each other would create more deaf children. Today, we understand this thinking was wrong and harmful. The deaf community has criticized Bell for these views, even though he spent his life helping deaf individuals learn to communicate. Bell felt this tension his entire life. He made a fortune from the telephone, but spent most of his money funding schools for the deaf, researching flight, yes, airplanes, and experimenting with other inventions. He helped develop the photophone, which transmitted sound on beams of light, an idea that led to modern fiber-optic communication. Section 5. The Final Mystery. Alexander Graham Bell died on August 2, 1922, at age 75. On the day of his funeral, every telephone in North America went silent for 1 minute as a tribute. Millions of phones, all silent at once. Can you imagine? The world stopping to honor the man who made it possible to talk across distances. But here's the final mystery. In his later years, Bell refused to have a telephone in his study. The man who invented the telephone didn't want one near him when he worked. He said it was too distracting, too disruptive. He preferred silence and concentration. Some people say Bell knew something we're only now discovering, that constant communication can harm deep thinking and creativity. Was he warning us? Was he regretful? We'll never know. Before he died, Bell signed his last words to his wife, Mabel, who was by his side. No. Nobody knows what question she asked him or what that no meant. It remains a mystery forever. So, what did we learn today? Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone by accident while trying to help deaf people. He won the patent by just a few hours in a controversial race. He became famous but felt guilty. He spent his life torn between his invention for hearing people and his love for the deaf community. And he died knowing that his invention had changed the world forever, for better and for worse. The telephone connected humanity, but it also started something we're still dealing with today, the challenge of balancing communication with peace, connection with distraction. What do you think? Was Bell a hero or a complicated figure? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and remember, you just learned English through truth, not through boring textbooks. Subscribe for more stories that teach you real English through fascinating history. See you in the next video.